Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today's video it is going to be another ranking. And I'm going to be ranking all 16 DCAMU movies. So the DCAMU is a series of animated movies set within the DC universe, all within the same continuity. It started back in 2013 with Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox and ended just recently in 2020 with Justice League Dark: Apocalypse War. And it is very important to note that there are only these 16 movies within this continuity, because DC also released plenty of animated one-offs within this time period. So movies like Justice League vs. the Fatal Five, Batman Gotham by Gaslight, Batman Ninja, Superman Red Sun, Superman Man of Tomorrow, all of those movies are not within this specific continuity. And very quickly before we hop into the ranking, I just wanted to mention that I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my ranking videos. So be sure to check that playlist out and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And now, without further ado, let's hop right into things. Number 16, Wonder Woman Bloodlines. Well, the final fight is actually pretty badass, and the only real entertaining portion of the movie. I mean, Wonder Woman fighting a giant Medusa, cutting off one of her hair snakes and using the venom to blind herself is just so cool. Not to mention Rosario Dawson kills it once again as Wonder Woman, as I feel she was fantastic for the role and does very well in all of her DCAMU outings. And also, I guess Silver Swan was a pretty cool character too that I didn't know about before this movie. But aside from that, I felt the story was very rushed, and a lot of the supporting characters were incredibly inconsistent. And for me, it just really lacked any sort of genuine emotion or drive. Number 15, Constantine, City of Demons, the movie. Look, I really like Constantine as a character, but I've never been a really big fan of this side of DC. The magical artifacts, the incantations, the demons, all that sort of jazz. And to be honest, I was pleasantly surprised by this movie because I actually felt the story was pretty solid. And although I found the demon designs very cool and quite interesting, I just don't really connect with this side of the universe all that much. Number 14, Justice League: Throne of Atlantis. It just feels like a rushed version of 2018's live-action Aquaman. Or I guess 2018's Aquaman is the long version of this. I really like how all of the Justice League are included in this movie. In fact, I find that's something that this universe addresses very well that many people criticize movies like the MCU for. Because it's like, where are all of these other heroes? Why aren't they helping their friends in their solo movies? So I felt that they've consistently done a very good job with answering those questions throughout these movies. However, it annoys me so much because they constantly get taken down with ease. Because in this movie, the entire Justice League gets wiped out by King Orm in seconds. Not to mention, Orm annoys me a ton in this movie. He just feels like a big whiny man-child. The action is actually pretty great, and I guess I should have mentioned this earlier, but I'm a big fan of 2018's Aquaman, so I felt the story was pretty sound as well. Except for the ending, because it feels so rushed and like it's over in a snap. Number 13, Justice League Dark. Like I said with the Constantine movie, I just don't really vibe with this side of DC. However, I did find the inclusion of Batman and the streamlined story did help with this a little bit. It does start off fairly slow, but it does get quite fun and exciting fairly quickly. Surprisingly, the story actually does have some memorable twists, and characters that I wish we got a lot more from in this universe. Etrigan is a badass, and Boston Brand is hilarious. Although Batman does feel severely outmatched and out of place here. But all in all, I actually found this to be a pretty solid adventure. Number 12, Justice League War. Look, I know a lot of people really love this one, but it's never just sat all the way right with me. I, of course, love all of the characters, and I found the voice performances were fantastic. The action is actually pretty thrilling, and I like how everyone has a part to play. But Darkseid gets reduced to a heavily sidelined, generic big baddie. But the fact that all of the Justice League are just coming together and meeting each other for the first time now, always felt so extremely forced and rushed to me. And it really doesn't make much sense. How could all of these heroes exist within this universe protecting the same planet but never once bump into each other? I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's an hour and 15-minute movie with a lot going on. Number 11, Batman Hush. You pretty much either hate or like this one. I don't really think anyone loves it. Some Batman junkies are die-hard fans of this graphic novel and were highly anticipating this adaptation. And many others just wanted another good animated Batman outing. I wanted both. And I very much so disagree with a lot of the major changes to the source material. But in all actuality, I ended up pretty entertained and satisfied overall. Because for all intents and purposes, the changes made did make sense for this universe and weren't all that bad. Just as a big fan of the source material, they are large departures. But again, they make sense for the context of this movie, and I do find it to be a solid Batman tale. Number 10. Batman Bad Blood. The action is always the best in the Batman movies. It's fast, fluid, hard-hitting, primarily close quarters hand-to-hand combat. And it is just as awesome here as it is in the others. I like the introduction to the new characters and the expansion of the Bat family, even though we don't see much of them ever again. However, I found the story to be fairly lackluster and they did the Mad Hatter so dirty. Not to mention, Talia al Ghul's character felt wildly inconsistent from what we've seen from her before. I know it feels like I'm only really pointing out the negatives to this movie, but for the most part it's actually extremely entertaining. Number 9. The Justice League vs. the Teen Titans. I actually really enjoyed the team building aspect that we got from the Titans in this one. And I thought it was great seeing the hardened and detached Damian begin to form new bonds and relationships, and really just sort of trying to fit in for the first time. However, this movie does take a very quick turn into the obscure and a very rushed finale. We get a very long and drawn out Dance Dance Revolution sequence and then shit just kinda hits the fan. The Justice League gets taken down with ease once again, and we get our entire finale in a very short period of time. Even if that finale is actually pretty kick-ass. And the whole Justice League versus the Teen Titans thing doesn't ever actually really happen. Number 8. Reign of the Supermen. I find this movie and its predecessor work best as a 2.5-hour two-parter, The Death and Return of Superman. Although as individual movies, they're both still pretty good. But as one long movie, it becomes excellent. I really liked all of the different Supermen and where they all came from. But once again, I hate how easily the rest of the Justice League gets sidelined. However, Superman's return is pretty great, and the finale does feel quite epic, grand, and overall earned. Number 7. The Death of Superman. This one gets a slight edge over its successor because I love Doomsday as a villain. And this movie did such a good job at making him feel very powerful. And the rest of the Justice League didn't actually get sidelined here. They all just kind of get their asses kicked. And I really did love seeing that Clark and Lois relationship blossom and grow. Though you do know exactly what's coming based off of the title, and if you're familiar with the source material, it still manages to be impactful and hit incredibly hard when the Man of Steel finally goes out. Number 6. Suicide Squad Hell to Pay. I actually ended up really digging this one, despite the fact that the object the Suicide Squad are on the hunt for is completely and utterly ridiculous. Nevertheless, it's the dynamic between the characters that really won me over here. How they interact with one another is fantastic, and interestingly enough, more complex than one would expect. Plus, another big positive was the inclusion of the Reverse Flash and his cronies tying it back into the Flashpoint paradox, as well as having Vandal Savage as one of the main villains, even if he does go down way too easily, definitely helped to make it more enjoyable. Not to mention, it lives up to the Suicide Squad name, and it actually has a surprisingly emotional ending. Number 5. Teen Titans The Judas Contract. Another one I was pleasantly surprised by, because I ended up being fairly shocked at just how much I liked this. Honestly, this universe is at its best when it focuses on more linear storytelling, because each movie only has about an hour and 10 to an hour and 20 minutes to work with. The story is fairly familiar though, because if you know the Teen Titans lore at all and know anything about the Terra storyline, then you know exactly what you're getting into. Thankfully though, they've added enough here like the inclusion of Brother Blood and his clan, as well as some other surprises to keep things fresh and interesting. Plus it being later on in the universe, we've actually already developed pretty tight relationships with these characters. And seeing them develop and grow even more helps to even further improve this movie. Number 4. Son of Batman. And I really dug this one. The action is fast, smooth, and hard-hitting. And I thoroughly enjoyed the dynamic between Bruce and Damian. And I honestly thought that the story overall was very well told. I didn't love the voice actor for Deathstroke in this one, I actually much preferred him in the previous entry, Teen Titans The Judas Contract. But the character, as always, was still magnificent. The lessons learned in the growth of these characters is exceptional, and it goes at such a breakneck pace to ensure that you are never bored. Number 3. Batman vs. Robin. And improving upon its predecessor is Batman vs. Robin. Now, although it doesn't really deliver on the name quite so much, it does certainly deliver on everything else. The fight scenes go even bigger and better here, and the introduction to the immortal Talons helps to offer up even more unique and refreshing fights. And it allows Batman and the Bat family to really let loose. The Court of Owls makes some marvelous and incredibly intimidating villains, and the main Talon himself makes for a very formidable foe. Number 2. Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox. The one that kicked off this universe is still a top contender for that number 1 spot. The Flashpoint Paradox is pretty much iconic at this point. The storytelling is absolutely stellar, as we enter a parallel reality where everything is completely different in creative, unique, and genuinely shocking ways. And I always seem to forget just how brutal this movie is. I am utterly shocked that this one somehow managed to miss out on an R rating, because it is brutal and relentless. It was such a huge departure from the norm for DC that it almost immediately won everybody over and has since become one of the most obsessed over storylines in the DC comics. And coming in at number 1 is Justice League: Dark Apocalypse War. I mean, this one truly has everything. It really does feel like their version of Endgame, only somehow even more hopeless. At least in Endgame, life went on. But here, the world has gone to shit. Full-blown post-apocalypse. And all of our remaining characters are constantly being hunted down by parademons. The story always finds a way to keep you on your toes and constantly guessing. The action sequences are quite thrilling and unbelievably violent. This is rated R for a reason, and it definitely earns it. We're seeing some of our most beloved characters at their most vulnerable and desperate. It's gruesome, it's shocking, it's epic, and it's quite ambitious. And while I do feel like the ending is a bit of a cop-out, it does make sense. In order to end this continuity and leave it as its own closed loop, while opening the door to another universe and a new line of continuity. And although I don't agree with every decision made, there's no doubt in my mind that this is the best that the DCAMU had to offer. And I am very much so looking forward to seeing the future of DC's animated lineup. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my ranking. And feel free to suggest what you'd like to see me rank next. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more content, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing that little bell icon. That way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe. Thank you so much for watching. And that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you, and while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.